You think the men who owned Caesar's Palace started with high rollers and marble fountains? They started with a 16-seat hot dog stand and one trick, steaming the hot dogs in beer. In 1969, two brothers who sold beer-soaked hot dogs walked into Las Vegas and bought Caesar's Palace for $60 million. Then they turned around and sold off the restaurants that had made them famous. You will discover how a beer-steamed hot dog built a 400-restaurant empire and a Las Vegas casino, and how both came crashing down. By the end, you will learn how the very casino that made the brothers rich ended up throwing them out over accusations linking them to the most infamous mobster in America. It all starts with a secret hamburger recipe that cost $1 million. This is the rise and fall of an American institution. How does a hot dog stand end up owning Caesar's Palace and then lose everything? In 1956, 41st Street in Miami Beach was not yet a playground for international high rollers. It was just a sunny stretch of asphalt where Stuart and Clifford Perlman bought a tiny 16-seat hot dog stand for $10,000. The brothers were not restaurateurs. Clifford was a World War II Army veteran trying to build a modest law practice, while his younger brother Stuart made a living as a door-to-door salesman. To scrape together their half of the down payment, Stuart had to borrow $6,000. The little shack they bought already carried the name Lums, painted on the storefront by its previous owner. The Perlmans kept the name to save on signage. For weeks, the brothers squeezed behind the counter themselves, wiping down laminate and learning how to boil franks in a cramped kitchen. They had a business, but they also had a $6,000 debt to pay back, one dime store hot dog at a time. But to draw tourists off the hot sand, the brothers turned to a cooking method that would immediately put them on the wrong side of the local liquor board. That method was deceptively simple. A quarter-pound Frankfurter was simmered in a bath of 1 part beer to 3 parts water, seasoned with caraway seeds, onion, sugar, and garlic powder. The broth reduced as it boiled, turning the meat a deep pink orange. More importantly, it released a heavy, yeasty steam. This aroma drifted onto the sidewalk, pulling customers through the door before they even read the sign. It was cheap, fast, and easy to repeat. But because the recipe required real lager, the brothers quickly hit a wall. Local authorities argued that steaming meat in alcohol made Lums a bar, forcing the Perlmans into bitter licensing fights with municipal boards just to keep their pots simmering. This constant legal friction threatened to choke the young business, but it also proved their quirky recipe possessed a strange, unstoppable power. In July 1965, the Perlmans realized that boiling hot dogs was profitable, but selling the franchise rights was where the real wealth lay. They launched an aggressive franchising program, and within months, their footprint of 15 locations exploded to 90. Suddenly, the brothers were no longer merely managing kitchens, they were selling a turnkey American dream, offering low entry fees and cold beer on tap. By 1969, Lums Incorporated had secured a listing on the New York Stock Exchange, turning a single hot dog stand into a Wall Street darling. The system ballooned to more than 400 locations, stretching outside the mainland into Hawaii, Puerto Rico, Spain, and West Germany. To sustain this momentum, they signed television star Milton Berle in 1971 to a 10-year, $50,000 a year contract as their national spokesperson. When his commercials debuted in 1975, his trademark humor drove millions of hungry families through the doors, even as rapid growth began to strain consistency across the network. The Perlmans began buying up meat-packing plants, discount stores, and Poconos resorts, transforming Lums into a diversified holding company that loved the deal more than the dog. This rapid corporate expansion gave the brothers immense leverage, but it also made the restaurant business feel far too small for their grander, high-stakes ambitions. To Stuart and Clifford Perlman, the hundreds of red-roofed restaurants became capital engines. They began using Lums stock as currency, executing rapid swaps and leveraged buyouts to gobble up completely unrelated industries. First came Gold Seal Meats, securing their supply chain. Soon after, they absorbed the Eagle Army-Navy discount store chain. Their most bizarre move was stepping far outside the kitchen to buy a honeymoon resort in the Pennsylvania Poconos, financed with a Teamsters pension loan. The brothers openly admitted they now ran a holding company that loved the deal more than the dog. This constant buying spree had nothing to do with perfecting the beer-steamed Frankfurter, but it gave the brothers a taste for complex, high-debt corporate maneuvers. Suddenly, the cash flow from thousands of hot dog sales was about to fund a $60 million gamble in the Nevada desert. In September 1969, the Perlman brothers bypassed the corporate ladder entirely and bought Caesar's Palace. The casino was a glittering 3-year-old Roman fantasy on the Las Vegas Strip, with 500 luxury rooms, a massive casino floor, and a reputation for high roller excess. The price tag was $60 million. It was an unthinkable sum for an empire built on 10-cent hot dogs, but federal investigators had been squeezing the casino's original developer, Jay Sarno, over his questionable financial backers, creating a sudden, desperate opening for clean cash. The Perlman stepped directly into the void, using their publicly traded Lums stock as leverage to finalize the transaction. This single purchase instantly transformed the Miami restaurateurs into Nevada gaming giants, forcing an immediate, irreversible choice between managing a national fast food franchise and running the most glamorous casino on earth. They simply could not do both. But as the brothers tasted the raw, daily cash flow of the Caesar's cage, the grease of the restaurant kitchens began to look like a distraction they were eager to sell off. In 1971, the Perlman brothers made their choice absolute, selling roughly 350 Lums restaurants to John Y. Brown Jr. Brown was already famous for building Kentucky Fried Chicken into a global giant, and he believed he could replicate that exact multi-million-dollar success with beer-steamed hot dogs. The transaction severed the brothers' link to the fast food world, allowing them to officially rename their public corporation Caesar's World and focus entirely on the high-priced tables of Las Vegas. But this corporate divorce split their legacy into two distinct gambles that would fail in completely different ways. Under Brown's control, the abandoned restaurant chain started a chaotic rescue mission, highlighted by the purchase of the secret Ollie Burger recipe from a Miami Beach cook for an astonishing $1 million. This high-priced culinary gimmick was supposed to reinvent the brand, yet it only masked a deeper operational rot. But while the hot dog empire began a slow, agonizing slide toward commercial bankruptcy under its new management, the Perlman brothers were finding that the glittering casino empire they chose instead was pulling them into a dark, highly scrutinized underworld, where federal regulators were already waiting. John Y. Brown Jr. quickly realized that selling chicken was not the same as reviving a fading hot dog brand. Sales plummeted. Panicking, Brown hunted for a menu miracle to stop the bleeding. In 1971, he found his savior in a cramped Miami Beach kitchen run by an eccentric cook named Ollie Gleichenhaus. Brown paid Gleichenhaus $1 million for the Ollie Burger, a 5.3-ounce patty seasoned with a secret blend of 23 herbs and spices. It was a massive financial gamble on a single hamburger. But the expensive spice blend failed to spark the nationwide stampede Brown needed, leaving the over-leveraged franchise vulnerable to a predatory European buyer. The fast food environment of the late 1970s left no room for drifting brands. While automated giants like McDonald's built highly streamlined supply chains, Lums lost its way, caught in a confusing identity crisis between its classic beer-steamed hot dogs and expensive, failing specialty burgers. Quietly, the signature red roofs began disappearing from American highways. By 1978, the network had shriveled from its peak of over 400 locations to just 273. Desperate to cut his losses, John Y. Brown sold the entire operation that same year to Wienerwald, a Swiss holding company known for rapid European restaurant buyouts. Wienerwald's leadership arrived with grand promises of a global empire, but their ambitions hit a dangerously unstable balance sheet. Survival replaced expansion as franchisees struggled with rising meat costs and falling foot traffic. The new owners poured cash into the crumbling network, yet their own foreign assets were already starting to fracture. That mounting corporate debt was about to trigger a sudden bankruptcy filing that would threaten to pull every remaining Lums location down with it, starting with the very store where the empire began. In 1982, Wienerwald's overextended global structure collapsed under the weight of its debts, dragging the Lums name into a federal bankruptcy court. The fallout was immediate and clinical. Court-ordered liquidations systematically dismantled the remaining network, forcing roughly 70 locations to turn off their grills overnight and walk away from their franchise agreements because the parent company could no longer supply them. Then, the financial rot reached the very foundation of the empire. On May 21, 1983, the original red-roofed stand at 461 41st Street in Miami Beach locked its doors for the last time, ending 27 years of beer-steamed hot dogs on the exact street where the Perlman brothers first pooled their $10,000. But the brand's long-tail survival was not entirely finished. Far from the Florida beaches, a single independent franchise in Bellevue, Nebraska survived as a bizarre, frozen-in-time outpost, stubbornly boiling its franks in lager and caraway seeds for loyal locals, all the way until 2017. With that final Nebraska closure, the physical footprint of the restaurant empire vanished completely, which meant the Perlman brothers' legacy now rested entirely on the glittering high-stakes casino empire they had built in the Nevada desert, a world where the cash flowed daily, but where federal gaming regulators were already quietly closing in. Clifford Perlman did not just run Caesar's Palace, he ballooned it. While their old hot dog stands withered across the country, Perlman used his Wall Street connections to inject corporate cash into a desert strip that traditional banks still feared to touch. He systematically expanded the resort from 550 rooms to a colossal 1,750-room mega resort. He secured Frank Sinatra for a decade-long headlining residency, paved over the parking lot to stage Formula One Grand Prix races, and hosted massive championship boxing matches featuring Muhammad Ali. Outside, he installed a one-way moving sidewalk that slowly swept pedestrians off the hot asphalt and deposited them directly in front of the slot machines. Caesar's was now bigger, louder, and richer than any hot dog chain could ever be, generating millions of dollars in daily cash. But this relentless drive for expansion required massive funding. And to get it, the brothers turned to quiet land deals with associates of the nation's most notorious mob bosses. In 1971, Caesar's World bought 320 acres of land and a country club north of Miami. The seller was Alvin Malnick, a Florida attorney whom federal investigators explicitly identified as a close financial associate of mob kingpin Meyer Lansky. That same year, the Perlmans bought additional parcels from Samuel Cohen, an ally later indicted for casino skimming operations. To finance their Poconos resort leases, the brothers secured a complex sale-leaseback structure funded by the notorious Teamsters Central States Pension Fund. This aggressive expansion left a paper trail that the Nevada Gaming Commission could not ignore. State regulators fired off 3 official warning letters to Caesar's World in 1975, 1977, and 1979, citing severe record-keeping deficiencies and demanding the brothers cut ties with their questionable partners. The Perlmans ignored the warnings, believing their immense casino revenues made them untouchable. But this paper trail was already traveling across state lines to a new East Coast gambling frontier, where regulators were far less forgiving. In Atlantic City, the Perlmans spent $70 million converting a boardwalk hotel into the new Boardwalk Regency Casino. But New Jersey gaming regulators refused to grant the brothers a permanent license, citing a failure to meet the state's strict honesty and integrity standards. The Casino Control Commission focused on Clifford Perlman's ongoing business relationship with Alvin Malnick, a Florida attorney whom federal investigators explicitly identified as a financial associate of Meyer Lansky. The commission delivered a clinical ultimatum. Caesars World could only keep its lucrative East Coast gaming license if the founders were completely removed from the company. When the New Jersey Supreme Court upheld this ruling, the board had no choice but to purge its creators. In July 1982, Clifford and Stuart resigned and sold their combined 5 million shares back to the corporation for nearly $100 million. That was twice the active market value. The brothers walked away with an immense fortune, but their exile meant they were powerless to stop the federal investigators who were still combing through the company's books. Today, the mega resorts of the Las Vegas Strip still run on the reckless leverage the Perlmans pioneered. They proved that humble, cash-flowing storefronts could fund towering monuments of luxury. It is a playbook modern Wall Street still copies, chasing the ultimate high. The house always wins, but sometimes the kitchen buys the house. What do you think of this forgotten empire? Let me know below.